Have you ever enjoyed a fictional world so much you wanted to see it at its most boring level? I love world building. I love to see what's prioritized when people go about creating fictitious settings. I love to see whether or not it is religion, politics, geography, language, culture. And I enjoy when someone creates something that is really grand and bold, something that is completely alien to what we know and what we recognize. But on the other side, I deeply enjoy a world where I can understand precisely what's going on, and I want to see it get even more mundane. Let me explain. Truthfully, this video is just me wanting to talk about some of the fictional worlds that I deeply enjoy and how I like to overthink them, as I tend to do. But let's get into it. There's no end to the list of fictional worlds that people will take a look at and go, I would love to live there. I would want nothing more than to settle down and have a full lived experience in one of these magical creative worlds that I have just consumed. Skyrim, The Shire, Cyberpunk, Star Trek, all of these worlds have a little bit of beauty to them and their own form of danger, truth be told, but it's totally understandable why people enjoy them so much. They are just inspiring pieces of creativity. But a little bit, and this is just to my taste, it could entirely be different for you, they don't make me want to look at the little things. These worlds deliver exactly what you need to know about them in the experience that you get them from, either sitting down and reading a book, controlling the main character in a video game, or sitting down in front of the screen and watching a story unfold. The focus is entirely on building an experience, one that is genuinely enjoyable and authentic and feels lived in. But what's fun about world building is sometimes taking things beyond the lived in and the comfortable and just going into the myopic, the nitty gritty, the unnecessary, and seeing what would things look like in this setting. And obviously, the worlds that I might be fascinated in might be different from the worlds that others are fascinated in. I know that there are people that have a deep understanding of medieval history and society that would love to interrogate the elements and implications that go on in Skyrim, or some people that are fascinated in the development of technology that might want to interrogate what it would mean to live in a society like what we see in Cyberpunk. But let's just get the ball rolling. Let's just start talking about how fun it is to look at the boring things in made-up worlds. Starting off with one of the most ubiquitous fictional settings, superhero society. Superhero society, superhero cities is something I will never get enough of. It is something I long to learn every little detail about. And mainly it is because it plays around with basically just alternate history, because you're dealing with events that happened in our world that never happened before, and you're dealing with places that never existed in our world. But what's so fun about superhero society is that, to a degree, it has to still resemble our world, our reality, our present day. And it leads to these questions and these implications that I know for a fact the creators and the writers had no intention of ever answering, and yet they kind of still remain when we dig a little deeper. And my go-to examples when I want to talk about this are obviously Gotham City, but also maybe surprisingly the world of My Hero Academia. My Hero Academia is such a fun world because of how hard it works to integrate the idea of superheroes being a living, breathing part of society into the actual fabric of the world. It's not just that people have powers and they go out and they save the world and they fight villains. No, the idea of a hero has become incorporated. It has been woven into the very fabric of society. You can't just casually become a hero in My Hero Academia, just like you can't just casually become a doctor in our world. You have to go to school, you have to study, you have to pass exams, you have to get your license, you have to network, you have to build brands. And to its credit, this is something that My Hero Academia is incredibly aware of and wants to explore. It's constantly drawing attention to the fact that hero work is a job, it pays well, people have the wrong motivations for going into it. It talks about how there is a perception, an investment in making sure that heroes appear as figures of justice and virtue when oftentimes they're celebrities, they are pampered and they are entitled and they are not what they seem. People have the wrong motivations for becoming heroes. They want the prestige of it, they want the wealth that it brings, they want the adoration. Just like in many other career paths, people go into it not wanting to do genuine good, but wanting to reap some kind of reward. So, without a doubt, top marks to My Hero Academia for presenting the world in this way, for exploring these questions, for entangling with its premise on many interesting levels. But then I have my dumb questions. Like, does the hero closest to you indirectly affect the value of your property? Do people protest and say that this guy's bad at his job and he's bringing our property values down? What about law? If this is a registered, overseen aspect of society, there has to be an entirely new branch of law. There has to be, like, new legal documents relating to hero law constantly coming out. There has to be new precedents set, all that kind of stuff. What about fraud? There has to be quark fraud going on left, right, and center. If you had the ability to turn things into gold and you're legally not allowed to do that, you have to be trying to find a way to get away with that without letting the government know. Who's responsible for stopping quark fraud? How do you even go about starting that case? What is the burden of proof it takes to show that someone is committing quark fraud? You can't just hold out something in front of them and go, turn it into gold, please. And finally, there are people that are adapted to completely different ways of life. There are people that can live their entire lives in the ocean or in the air. What does that look like for people that don't fit into society? Is there just an entirely new class of hermits and nomads that have separated themselves, gone their own ways? What's life like for those people? And again, I would say that this is nothing but praise to My Hero Academia and the creativity of its world building, because even though this is a story that is all about heroism and villains and super moves and great big flashy battles in the sky, at the end of the day, one thing that keeps me coming back to this franchise is the fact that I'm so interested in the myopic little details about the everyday life of this very interesting world. Gotham City is another great example, because here's the thing. You don't need to sell me on Batman. I love Batman. You put Batman in a story and I will be there. But just as much as I love seeing stories about Batman and learning about the character, I also love seeing stories about Gotham City and learning about the character of Gotham City. Gotham City, like most superhero cities, is nebulous. It doesn't really exist. All it is a vehicle that is meant to deliver Batman from wherever he needs to be to wherever he needs to go. Whatever Batman needs, Gotham City is going to provide. If there needs to be a lake, Gotham is going to have a lake. If there needs to be a fireworks festival, Gotham City is going to have a fireworks festival. It's like Batman's toolkit. Whatever he needs, he's going to find in that belt. Whatever needs to happen in the city is going to be able to happen in the city. But that doesn't stop me from wanting to see Gotham be kind of boring. And again, this is a good thing for stories Batman writers are trying to tell. Just as My Hero Academia is focused on weaving in elements of heroics into its society, Batman is focused on making sure that his story can keep going. Making sure Gotham has unlimited potential is to its advantage. It allows them to keep churning out Batman stories, and it makes sure that the city never constrains that creativity. Because when you spend a lot of time with a character in comics, things start to take on a stable trajectory. There are little things that linger from story to story, stuff that starts to form the underlying character and traits of whoever we're following, and it's no different for Gotham. And little by little, we've started to get those tidbits for Gotham City. We know that it's in the state of New Jersey. We know that it borders Metropolis. We know that the Court of Owls have been responsible for its creation. And therein lies my dumb questions. How long has Gotham been a thing? What was it doing during the Revolutionary War, or Prohibition, or the Cold War? What's its most popular sport? Is it baseball, basketball, football, hockey? What's the food scene like in Gotham? What do other cities in the United States think about it? If you're from Gotham and you're talking from someone to New York, how do they look at it? What do people outside of Gotham think about the Court of Owls? Does Gotham just have a bunch of owl-themed gargoyles chilling on their buildings? Should most of their sports teams actually be owl-themed teams? It's kind of the inverse of My Hero Academia, where that society was all about folding in elements of the heroes' lives into everyday society. Gotham City kind of wants to stay distant from Batman, because the more distant it stays, the more potential it has to be whatever the story requires it to be. But because of how long it's been going, because of how storied this city has become, there is real potential for it to feel like a genuinely real, living, breathing place. I got cold. The sweater is on. Moving on. Now, again, it is easy to want to pick apart Gotham and My Hero because those worlds are so very similar to our own, but really any world has the potential to stoke that kind of mundane interest. All it requires, honestly, is to make the distinction that not only are there other stories happening within this world, but there are regular people living their everyday lives within this world. So it could be looking at the world of Avatar and how bending relates to the everyday lives of the people that live it. You could look at Amphibia and try and think about how the heck does a society made of frogs, toads, and newts coexist. Thinking about Piltover and Zon, how those two societies grow alongside each other, how they push and pull against each other, the way their cultures evolve together but separately. Even something as small as 1313, the shadiest floor on Coruscant in Star Wars, invites those kinds of questions. Because what must it be like to live in a place like that? This sprawling, planet-sized city just brimming with all kinds of life, language, food, culture, and not only do you have that thrown into the mix, but also apparently it is the worst of everything there. These little details are ultimately meaningless when it comes to telling a broader story, but they are such an excellent additional flavor to how we understand the story, to how we look at the greater world, to making it feel real and tangible. Almost like we could imagine what our lives would be in if we ever had the opportunity to experience or be subjected to a scenario like this. And really, this long ramble just goes back to the fact that there is such a joy in the idea of world building. Not only are there limitless things for people to create, there's also limitless things for people to enjoy. This entire video has been me talking about all the little things that I would love to overthink, to examine. If someone sat me down and said, here's the entire complete history of Gotham City from its founding to modern day, I would go, thank you. Is there a sequel? But you could want to learn about entirely different things in your fictional settings, and that's what's so fun about it. There's no limit to the amount of boring things people want to learn about fantastical worlds. So I would love to know what those things are and what worlds really stoke your interest and creativity, and what, on the small scale to the grand scale, really gets your mind going. Let me know in the comments down below.